Imagine a bank so powerful, even the IMF listens to it. A bank that doesn't appear in news headlines, doesn't make policy speeches on television, and yet quietly pulls the strings behind the world's biggest financial decisions. A bank that's not accountable to any single country, one that works in shadows, talks to central banks, not people, and influences the lives of billions without them ever knowing it exists. This is not science fiction. This is the Bank for International Settlements, the secretive, ultra powerful financial institution most people have never even heard of. In this video, we'll pull back the curtain on the BIS. What it is, how it was created, what it actually does, and most importantly, why it might be the most powerful bank in the world. More powerful than the IMF, more influential than the World Bank, and yet almost completely invisible. Let's dive in. The Bank for International Settlements, or BIS, is often called the central bank for central banks. But what does that actually mean? Founded in 1930, the BIS was originally created to handle World War I reparations from Germany to other European countries. But once that job faded, the BIS didn't disappear. Instead, it transformed into something far more influential. Today, the BIS is a global institution with one main mission: to coordinate monetary policy between central banks and promote global financial stability. In simple terms, the BIS helps the world's most powerful central banks talk to each other, share information, and decide what to do about global finance. It's based in Basel, Switzerland, and hosts regular private meetings with central bank governors from over 60 countries. These aren't open Zoom calls. They're secretive, closed-door discussions with no press, no transcripts, and no public minutes. It's in these rooms that many of the world's most important financial decisions are quietly coordinated. The BIS doesn't control a country's economy directly. It doesn't issue currency, and you'll never see it printing money like the Federal Reserve. But its power comes from something even deeper: influence. Because the BIS works with central banks, and central banks control national currencies, interest rates, and liquidity, the BIS ends up shaping how money flows around the globe. Let's put it this way. If the IMF is the emergency room during a financial crisis, then the BIS is the operating theater where long-term plans are made. While the IMF lends money to countries in trouble, the BIS tells the central banks what kind of policies to consider before a crisis even happens. It's the architect behind the scenes. And here's the twist. The IMF actually gets many of its policy ideas and economic frameworks from the BIS. Let that sink in for a second. The IMF, the institution that dictates economic policy to struggling countries, often takes its cues from the BIS. That's like realizing your boss has a boss and you've never even met them. So why haven't you heard more about the BIS? Because that's exactly how they like it. Unlike the IMF or World Bank, the BIS doesn't deal with the public or elected officials. It doesn't ask for permission, and it's not easy to audit. It operates above national governments, outside the reach of most courts, and is protected by diplomatic immunity in Switzerland. That means its documents can't be seized, its staff can't be arrested, and its meetings are off limits. To give you an idea of how secretive it is, the BIS holds what are called global economy meetings every 2 months. These meetings include the heads of the world's top central banks, the Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, the Bank of Japan, the People's Bank of China, and more. And yet, the public never hears what is said. No press releases, no interviews, no accountability. You might be wondering, okay, so they're powerful and secretive, but what do they actually do? Let's take the 2008 financial crisis. While most governments and institutions were scrambling to figure out what happened, the BIS had already been issuing warnings for years. In fact, the BIS was one of the few institutions that consistently warned about excessive lending, rising debt, and the instability of the global banking system well before the crash. But here's the kicker: they didn't go public. They shared these concerns only with central banks behind closed doors. That's the kind of influence they wield: quiet, reserved, but potentially game-changing. And in the aftermath of the 2008 crash, it was the BIS that helped redesign global banking regulations through something called Basel III, a set of rules that shaped how banks hold capital and manage risk. The rules weren't written by elected leaders, they weren't debated in Parliament or Congress. They came from BIS boardrooms. Let's be clear, the BIS doesn't own the IMF. They're separate institutions. But the BIS often provides the intellectual framework, data, and research that guides IMF policy. For example, when the IMF tells a struggling country to raise interest rates, reduce public spending, or privatize national industries, those recommendations often align with models built by economists at the BIS. It's like a teacher giving you answers to a test and then watching from the sidelines. In some ways, the BIS acts like a think tank for central banks and international institutions like the IMF, and that's where its quiet power lies. It doesn't command, it suggests. But those suggestions end up shaping the future of entire economies. And unlike the IMF, the BIS never takes the blame when things go wrong. This is where things get even more mysterious. The BIS is technically owned by 63 central banks, representing countries that together account for about 95% of global GDP. These include the Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, the Bank of England, the Bank of Japan, and the People's Bank of China. But here's what's interesting. The BIS is not accountable to any single government, and its shareholders, the central banks, are themselves unelected institutions. So we have a bank that's owned by banks, run by bankers, and reports only to other bankers. No voters, no journalists, no transparency. Yet this bank plays a major role in guiding the economic fate of the world. You might be thinking, okay, but I'm not a banker. Why should I care? Because decisions made at the BIS can affect your mortgage, your job, your savings account, and even the price of groceries. When the BIS pushes for higher interest rates to combat inflation, your loan payments go up. When it warns against government spending, your country might cut public services. The ripple effect of these closed-door conversations stretches all the way to your wallet. And yet, most people have no idea the BIS even exists. Not necessarily. The BIS isn't evil. It's not plotting world domination. Many economists praise it for providing stability, improving global coordination, and reducing the chances of another massive financial meltdown. But the real issue is transparency and accountability. Should so much power be concentrated in an institution that operates behind closed doors? Should global financial policy be shaped by unelected officials without public oversight? These are the real questions we need to be asking. So now you know. While the IMF, World Bank, and even national governments make the headlines, the BIS quietly sits above them all, shaping the flow of money around the world. It doesn't need to control you directly. It just needs to whisper to the people who do. The next time you hear about a financial crisis, a central bank decision, or a global economic summit, ask yourself, who's really making the decisions? And who's holding them accountable? Because in the world of global finance, the most powerful players are often the ones you never hear about. This was the Bank for International Settlements, the bank that tells the IMF what to do. And now,